Welcome to This Day in His Story, created by American Heritage Worldwide. A reminder that every day holds something new to learn. Did you know that one vote changed history on August 18, 1920, when Tennessee became the 36th state to ratify the 19th Amendment, giving women the constitutional right to vote? Learn that Representative Harry Byrne received a heartfelt letter from his mother earlier that morning that said, "Hurrah," and vote for suffrage. Don't keep them in doubt, and support ratification. Discover that after the Tennessee vote, and with a red rose pinned to his lapel, Byrne fled the crowds surrounding the state capitol by going to the attic of the building until the angry anti-suffragist mobs dispersed. It is August 18th, 1920. You are standing in the sweltering, totally unair-conditioned heat of the Tennessee state legislature.
Oh, yeah, just miserable heat.
Exactly. I mean, the men packed into this chamber are sweating through these heavy wool suits. Lawmakers are practically hallucinating from severe sleep deprivation. Their eyes are bloodshot. And outside the doors, there are furious mobs just screaming.
Creating this actual wall of noise that's vibrating through the floorboards.
Right. Because a brutal, decades-long battle for women's right to vote in the U.S. basically comes down to this exact room on this exact day. Tennessee is positioned to be the 36th state to ratify the 19th Amendment,
Which would officially seal its passage into the Constitution.
Exactly. But the roll call is completely deadlocked. The vote is tied at 48-48.
The tension in that room must have been almost suffocating, you know. The entire trajectory of American democracy is just suspended in this perfect, paralyzed stalemate.
Yeah, it's wild. Welcome to the Deep Dive. We are unpacking a massive stack of historical records today to explore the unbelievable true story of how that 48-48 tie was finally broken.
It's such a crazy story.
It really is. We're looking at the extreme, frankly terrifying tactics used by the opposition and the incredibly unlikely 24-year-old hero of the hour. So, okay, let's unpack this. We really can't appreciate the shock of how this tie was broken without first mapping out the sheer chaos of the battlefield these people were operating in, right?
Right, because you don't arrive at a deadlocked vote of this magnitude by accident.
No, absolutely not.
It takes decades of relentless pressure colliding with an immovable object. To really understand the mechanics of that 48-48 tie, you have to look at the generations of momentum that were crashing into Nashville.
I mean, this was the culmination of a tireless, highly structured coalition.
Yeah. Picture the massive 1912 suffrage parade in New York, right? Where thousands of women marched in highly coordinated ranks. The organizational energy from those early, massive public demonstrations had just been compounding year after year.
Right, transforming into this highly sophisticated political machine by the time it finally reached Tennessee.
Exactly.
And what really stands out on the records is how incredibly diverse that machine actually was. Like, this wasn't just a monolith of wealthy, influential women.
Not at all.
This was a deeply intersectional movement long before anyone even used that term. You had Native American women, Latino women, and Asian American women organizing their communities. And African American women in particular played a foundational role in the Tennessee struggle.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I really want to highlight community organizers like Juno Frankie Pierce. She wasn't just holding up a sign, she was executing this brilliant, systematic ground game to register Black voters in local communities.
And the logistics of her work are just staggering when you consider the environment she was in. I mean, Pierce was navigating the absolute height of Jim Crow laws,
Right.
facing systemic disenfranchisement and overt, dangerous hostility. Yet she utilized community networks, local churches, and civic organizations to educate and mobilize a massive demographic.
She was building a whole electoral apparatus from the ground up.
Literally from the ground up. And she was doing this parallel to a whole roster of fierce local Tennessee stalwarts. You had Elizabeth Avery Merriweather operating out of Memphis.
Yeah.
Lizzie Crozier French dominating the grassroots efforts in Knoxville, and Ann Dallas Dudley anchoring the movement in Nashville.
And we also have to mention Abby Crawford Milton in Chattanooga and Sue Shelton White in Jackson. These women had mapped out every single voting block, every legislative district, and every pressure point in the state.
They were relentless.
They really were. But, reading through the primary sources detailing the atmosphere of the General Assembly itself, it doesn't read like a standard historical debate. It reads like a high-stakes, modern political thriller.
Oh, for sure.
The legislature was under a literal psychological siege. It got so extreme that some of the anti-suffrage legislators actually packed their bags and fled the state of Tennessee entirely.
Which is wild.
Right. They crossed state lines as a desperate parliamentary maneuver just to prevent a quorum, basically ensuring a legal vote couldn't even take place.
Yeah, I mean, fleeing jurisdiction is the ultimate act of political desperation. But honestly, their panic was completely rational given the mathematics of the ratification process.
Right, because 35 states had already ratified it.
Exactly. The Constitution requires 3/4 of the states to ratify, which meant the suffragists only needed 36. So Tennessee fell, the war was over. The amendment would become the law of the land.
Wow.
The anti-suffrage forces recognized this was their absolute final stand. They weren't trying to win a polite debate, They were deploying brutal psychological and economic tactics to fundamentally break the will of the state representatives.
So the suffragists had this incredible ground game, but you don't get a deadlocked 48-48 vote unless an equally powerful, highly organized opposing force is pushing back.
Right.
And surprisingly, that force wasn't just a room full of male politicians desperately guarding the status quo. The opposition was heavily orchestrated by women.
Yeah, specifically the Tennessee State Association's anti-suffrage women.
Right. And their prominent leader was an educator named Josephine A. Pearson. And here is where the historical record gets really interesting.
Oh, the irony here is just amazing.
It is. Josephine A. Pearson is fighting tooth and nail against a woman's right to vote, declaring it a danger to society. Yet the sources reveal she simultaneously harbored hopes of being elected to the United States Senate.
It is honestly one of the most glaring contradictions of the era. I mean, you have a highly educated, fiercely ambitious woman leading a sophisticated political campaign to ensure that she and millions of others remain legally locked out of the political process.
The very process she so clearly wishes to participate in.
Exactly.
The cognitive dissonance is staggering. Like, how do you plan a Senate run while actively campaigning to ensure women can't even cast a ballot for you?
It almost doesn't make sense until you look at the funding. The hidden machinery behind this opposition is wild. The sources show that massive corporate interests and powerful business people were quietly bankrolling the anti-suffrage movement.
Let me guess, these industrial leaders were terrified that if women got the vote, they would immediately push for labor reforms, child labor laws, and safer working conditions.
Yep.
So rather than fighting those reforms openly, they hid behind traditionalist women's groups as a massive PR shield.
That is the exact mechanism at play. It was a brilliantly cynical public relations strategy. I mean, if wealthy industrialists stood on a podium and demanded that women be denied the vote, it would instantly be recognized as just corporate greed.
Right. It would expose their fear of sweeping labor reform.
Exactly. But by funding women like Josephine A. Pearson to serve as the face of the opposition, they completely reframed the narrative. They manufactured the appearance of a massive cultural divide,
making it look as though the majority of women were begging the government to protect them from the quote-unquote burden of enfranchisement.
Exactly. And the tactics they funded to deliver that message were nothing short of psychological warfare. The records detail this grueling, torturous reality for the legislators trapped in Nashville.
Yeah, I read that the corporate-backed anti-suffragists established a system where representatives were bombarded with phone calls every single half hour.
Around the clock, day and night.
Just to ensure these men could not achieve REM sleep. They wanted to force them to make the most consequential legal decision of their careers while physically deteriorating from sleep deprivation.
Because exhaustion breaks down critical thinking, which makes a person far more susceptible to intimidation.
Wow, yeah.
And once the legislators were thoroughly sleep deprived, the economic threats began. Representatives received explicit, direct warnings that they would lose their jobs, their businesses would be boycotted, or their loans would be called in if they didn't vote exactly as the anti-suffragists demanded.
The corporate backers were leveraging every ounce of their financial power to enforce a nay vote.
Absolutely.
They also weaponized visual propaganda on a massive scale. The state was flooded with anti-suffrage political cartoons designed to trigger absolute hysteria about the collapse of the traditional American home.
Oh, the cartoons were intense.
There is one specific cartoon detailed in our sources that perfectly captures the strategy. It shows a stern-looking woman marching out the front door, completely abandoning her crying children and her husband.
Right, the rooster cartoon.
Yes, and as she leaves, she points to the family rooster and tells it, "Set on them yourself, old man, my country calls me." Like, she is literally telling a male rooster to sit on the eggs and hatch them because she is too consumed by politics to care for her young.
The visual messaging was incredibly potent. The narrative wasn't just that voting was inappropriate for women. Yeah. The narrative was that a woman casting a ballot would fundamentally unravel the biological and moral fabric of society.
It played directly into the deepest anxieties of those male lawmakers.
It really did.
Yeah.
So when you place yourself back into that sweltering, chaotic legislative chamber on August 18th, 1920, you aren't looking at some dignified democratic process.
Right.
You are looking at exhausted, economically threatened, deeply manipulated men who have been lobbied way past the breaking point, surrounded by screaming crowds, with the entire nation waiting for a verdict.
And that sets the stage perfectly for the climax. We are at the roll call, the clerk is reading the names, the tally is deadlocked at 48-48.
The ultimate cliffhanger.
Truly. If it stays a tie, the amendment fails in Tennessee, and the entire national movement hits a brick wall, and the deciding vote suddenly falls squarely on the shoulders of Representative Harry Burn.
Let's take a look at who holds the fate of the 19th Amendment here. Harry Burn is just 24 years old.
So young.
He's the youngest single member of the state legislature, hailing from a rural district in East Tennessee.
And the visual of him in that chamber is incredibly striking. The youngest man in the room, carrying the weight of a century-long struggle, and he is visibly broadcasting his allegiance.
Right, because pinned prominently to the lapel of his suit jacket is a bright red rose.
Yeah. In the complex visual language of this debate, those floral arrangements were essentially battle flags. A yellow rose signaled absolute support for women's suffrage.
But a red rose was the undeniable, universal symbol of the anti-suffrage movement.
So by wearing that red rose, Harry Burn was signaling to the aggressive lobbyists, to the galleries, and to his terrified colleagues that he was a solid, reliable, nay, he was visually pledged to kill the amendment.
Every suffragist looking at that young man with the red rose assumed the battle was lost. The opposition was certain they had secured their victory. What none of them knew, what couldn't be seen from the gallery, was the secret piece of paper tucked away in his pocket.
Right.
Earlier that very morning, before the chaos completely consumed the chamber, Burn had received a letter from his mother, Phoebe Ensminger Burn. She was a fiercely intelligent woman and a staunch, unwavering supporter of the suffrage movement.
Her letter is arguably one of the most important private documents in American political history. Like, what exactly did she write to him while he was sitting in the middle of this political war zone?
Well, she wrote with incredible clarity and conviction. Her exact words were, "Hurrah! And vote for suffrage. Don't keep them in doubt. I noticed some of the speeches against. They were bitter. I've been watching to see how you stood, but have not noticed anything yet. Be a good boy and help Mrs. Cat put the rat in ratification."
Be a good boy and help put the rat in ratification. I am obsessed with that line. It is the ultimate mom text, just delivered via a handwritten letter in 1920.
It really is.
I mean, put yourself in Harry Burns' shoes. You were in the middle of the most terrifying high-stakes presentation of your life. Powerful tycoons are threatening your livelihood. Colleagues have fled the building in panic.
Yeah.
And the people who agree with your lapel pin are literally screaming outside. You are wearing the company colors, prepared to toe the line, and then you get a message from your mom.
And in an instant, you completely change your entire political strategy.
Because, on a fundamental level, she has the moral high ground.
Exactly. And the mechanics of the vote happen almost too quickly for the room to process. The clerk reaches Burn's name on the roll call. Burn, still wearing the red rose of the opposition, clutching his mother's letter, responds with a single word, "Aye."
Wow.
He says it so fast that the recording clerk actually hesitates, needing a moment to register the completely unexpected response. It was a blindingly fast reversal.
Just one syllable, aye. And the 48-48 tie shatters. He votes yes, the amendment passes, and the room absolutely explodes.
I can only imagine.
The sources detail the immediate fallout, and it is chaotic. Byrne literally has to flee the chamber to escape the furious anti-suffragist mobs who realize they have just been outmaneuvered.
Because he is still wearing their red rose while actively betraying their cause.
Right. He runs deep into the state capitol building, eventually hiding in the attic. Accounts even describe him creeping out onto a high third-floor ledge, risking a fatal fall just to avoid being physically attacked by the enraged crowds storming the halls.
The physical danger to him was immediate and severe. He had just upended the established power structure of the nation with a single word. But what is truly remarkable is his absolute lack of regret.
Yeah, he didn't cower or walk back his decision at all.
Not even a little. The very next day, once the dust had slightly settled, Byrne stood before the public and fiercely defended his last-minute reversal.
What did he say?
He stated plainly, "I believe we had a moral and legal right to ratify. I know that a mother's advice is always safest for her boy to follow, and my mother wanted me to vote for ratification."
It is a stunning sequence of historical lines. Decades of organized struggle, massive parades, agonizing psychological warfare, millions in corporate money.
And the entire edifice hinges on a 24-year-old deciding to listen to his mother.
But, as we dig deeper into the sources, it becomes clear that this choice wasn't just a clever political maneuver or some heartwarming anecdote. The underlying philosophy of this moment connects to a much deeper, absolute truth about human freedom.
It really does.
Yeah.
It illustrates a profound reality about the nature of agency. This historical event is a perfect real-world manifestation of divine agency. We know, as a matter of absolute fact, that God has given men and women the maximum freedom of their agency to act according to their individual choices.
Right.
This isn't just a philosophical theory, it is a divine reality, distinctly outlined in texts like the Doctrine and Covenants, section 101, verse 78. That text clearly frames how God established this maximum freedom so that every individual can be fully accountable for their own choices and actions.
And the vote in Tennessee is a direct reflection of that divine principle in action on a societal scale.
Yes.
Because that divine freedom to choose is completely inseparable from the earthly right to vote. When we examine the mechanics of suffrage, we aren't just talking about fulfilling a basic civic duty.
No, not at all.
We are talking about the structural, legal expression of that God-given agency. If God has unequivocally granted men and women the maximum freedom to act according to their own choices, then the right to vote is the fundamental earthly mechanism designed to protect and honor that divine grant.
The theology perfectly explains the stakes of the history here. The systemic legal denial of women's right to vote was an artificial, human-made restriction placed upon a divine mandate of agency.
Wow, yeah.
By casting that single tie-breaking vote, Harry Byrne was doing far more than altering a state constitution. He was forcefully aligning human law with divine intent.
That is so powerful.
It highlights a crucial mechanism of how change occurs. The world fundamentally relies on good men and women of faith to influence others for good. Think about the cascading chain of righteous influence here.
Right.
Phoebe Ensminger Byrne utilized her agency, through a simple handwritten note, to influence her son. Her son then utilized his agency, under the threat of physical violence, to secure the agency of millions of women across the country.
That brings this massive historical event right down to an incredibly personal level. Byrne's mother didn't even have the legal right to vote, yet she effectively cast the deciding vote for millions of American women just by picking up a pen and speaking truth to her son.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder about the mechanics of influence in your own life. Whose quote-unquote vote or agency are you influencing right now with a simple text, a letter, or a passing piece of advice?
We all have these seemingly small moments where a word of guidance fundamentally redirects a path.
Right. Phoebe Byrne simply had a voice, and she chose to use it exactly when her son was under unimaginable, crushing pressure.
True systemic change rarely happens in a vacuum. It requires individuals actively choosing to exercise their agency with immense bravery.
Especially when the mob is quite literally beating on the door, threatening their livelihoods, their safety, and their social standing.
Yeah, exactly.
It fundamentally changes how you look at the progress of history. So just to summarize the massive ground we've covered today, we explored a deeply intersectional struggle that required decades of blood, sweat, and tears from women across the country.
We stepped into a fiercely divided, sweltering room in Tennessee.
We unpacked how exhausted, sleep-deprived politicians were brutally manipulated by corporate interests who were masking themselves as a grassroots cultural movement.
And through all that deafening noise and psychological warfare, a 24-year-old secured the maximum freedom of agency for millions of citizens, simply because he had the courage to listen to his mother.
The legacy of that ground game is, thankfully, permanently etched to our landscape. If you visit downtown Knoxville, Tennessee today, you will find a women's suffrage memorial honoring the incredible local heroes of this movement.
Yes, women like Lizzie Crozier, French, and Ann Dallas Dudley are immortalized in bronze there, ensuring that we never forget the grueling local groundwork that made Harry Burns' single tie-breaking vote even mathematically possible.
It is a stunning tribute to a chaotic, messy, but ultimately triumphant moment in human history. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to really mull over.
Yeah.
We often fall into the trap of viewing history like a clean, predictable timeline in a textbook. We think progress is just inevitable. But the reality is that the shape of our world is forged in sweltering, chaotic rooms by exhausted people making split-second decisions.
It really is.
If one young man's split-second exercise of agency, guided by nothing more than a simple piece of paper from his mother, could shatter a decades-long deadlock and unlock freedom for millions.
How might your own everyday exercises of agency be shaping the world?
Exactly. How might the simple, seemingly insignificant advice you share with your family be quietly, fundamentally altering the future of those around you?
The smallest exercises of agency often have the most staggering ripple effects.
They really do. I highly encourage you to explore that thought today. Ask a family member or a friend about the best piece of advice they've ever received and how it altered their path. You might be entirely surprised by the chains of influence you uncover. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the sweltering heat of August 1920, where a deadlocked vote wasn't the end of the line, but the messy, magnificent catalyst for a new era of freedom. Thank you for joining us for this day in his story. May the lessons of yesterday inspire you to see God's hand today and to play your part in his story now. For more faith-based learning, visit ahsworldwide.org, the homeschool for faith and family.